This is November 25th, 2014. We are in Athens, Georgia. I am Joanna Smolko, and I'm interviewing Shannon Primm as part of the Music in Athens project. And specifically, we will be talking about the importance of sacred harp in Athens. Okay, Shannon, to start with, I'd love to know where you're from and when you first encountered shape note music. And if it was as an adult, were there things in your childhood that allowed you to really enjoy it when you first came to it?
Well, I'm originally from South Alabama. I was born in Monroeville, Alabama, and my family moved about 18 months later to North Florida. And when I was growing up there, my first encounter with shape notes was actually when I was playing the piano for my church group, my youth group at church when I was about 12 or 13. There was an old hymnal that was written in shape notes. And of course, I didn't know really what those were, and nobody could tell me what they were. Nobody knew what they were. So, and it didn't really matter. You know, I didn't think much about it because I was able to play. It really didn't affect my piano playing at all. So, I didn't think much about it again for a long time. But then I encountered it again when I was in college. My college choral director took us down. I went to college at what was Troy State University at the time in Troy, Alabama. He took us down to Ozark, Alabama, and we saw a demonstration singing there with what was known as the Wiregrass Singers. It's a group of African American singers who are widely known, and they were led by Dewey Williams, who has passed away, unfortunately, but he was a leader in that community, a long-time leader in that community, a very charismatic person, and he received a NEA Heritage Fellowship for his participation and his promotion of the tradition. So that was my first real exposure to the singing, the shape note singing, was he and his group. And this was in the 70s, so prior to the internet, so I really didn't see much of it, and unfortunately we didn't get any further education about it at the time, so it was a long time before I encountered it again, which was here in Athens. I saw an advertisement about shape note singing at the Botanical Gardens. This was in the early 90s, and said, oh, I'm going to that, so I did. So that was my first real shape note singing experience.
That's wonderful. So it sounds like you were playing the piano as a child, so you had a musical background?
I did. My mother pushed me to take piano lessons, and we lived in a small town, and sometimes teachers were not always available, but I took for several years throughout my adolescence and high school, and was always encouraged to participate and support church, so I did that quite frequently. And when I go visit my grandmother in South Alabama, she went to a very small church, and they didn't have a piano player at all, so I always played for them when I was there. So it was something I enjoyed very much. So yeah, and I did some chorus and band in college too, so yeah, I do have some musical experience.
That's great. When you heard the Wiregrass Singers, were there things that really struck you about the sound? Sounds like it was something you remembered even decades later.
Right. It was very raw, sort of, and pure, just, I don't know how to describe it. It was, it's like it was coming from their very centers, from the essence of their being. It was just deep, deep down, kind of. To me, it was soul music, It's just that sort of feeling that they were so into it, and just the sound. It was just so, I don't know. I guess when you say pure, sometimes people think about angelically pure, but it was it was a more earthy, pure kind of thing. It was very striking.
When yeah, it's I know a number of people the first time they hear it, it's just a sound like no other. When you came to the botanical garden singing, was the sound different, or did it really resonate for you with what you had heard the first time?
It was different. In those singers, I've come to find later that the singers had often were in a position where they might not, maybe two people would have books. So they often use lining out as a method of singing, or they would sing slower, so people could learn the songs. Had to learn more by rote, since some didn't have books for reading. So they kind of develop a tradition of a more slow, ornamented singing. And I don't know if that's all factual, but that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah.
That this was one of the influences in the development of this ornamental singing that they did. And in contrast, at the Botanical Garden, everybody was reading the notes. It was a more rhythmic singing rather than ornamented. So
Okay.
it was more together, and there was a more rhythmic feel to it. So.
And we know that there's the black tradition, the sacred harp, sometimes called the colored sacred harp tradition, which has its traditions like you were talking about, but also we know that the particular regions oftentimes will have a distinctive approach to the sacred harp music.
Yes.
So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a large group at that first singing?
It was not a large group, but that may have been too. That was during the day, and so
Yeah.
it was. I don't know if you're familiar with Judge Jackson, who compiled and wrote a lot of the songs in the colored sacred harp. He and some of his family members were there, and some of Dewey Williams' family members were there, and then there were a couple of others. So it may have been about 12 or 15 singers on that first time there.
Wow. And what about at the Botanical Garden singing? So you said this was in the 1990s.
Right.
It's your first time returning to it since the 1970s?
It was probably, I would guess, about 50 singers.
Okay.
So it was a pretty sizable class. So.
Do you remember some of the people you met there?
Yes, I met the most prominent person, one that sticks out the most, was Lee Rogers, who was a woman who was in our area for a while and was a big promoter of shape note singing. And she grabbed me and says, "Do you live in Athens?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, you're coming to our singing." And I said, "Okay." So you talked me into it. And the Hollingsworths were there. I'm trying to think who else. And the Garst, John and Edna Garst were there. Those were probably ones that I remember. I don't remember anybody else right off.
So did you go to the Athens singing?
I
With Lee?
did. I did.
Where was it hosted?
At the time, it was Holy Cross Lutheran on Westlake or Alps. I guess that's Westlake at that point. So it was a very small group.
Okay. And was it a monthly singing? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
there's a little bit of contrast from the Botanical Gardens, which would
Right.
be an annual singing,
right.
and bringing people from the region,
Right.
and this would be more of a local
Yes.
practice.
Yes. So.
And so, as you became involved with it, so that would be the 1990s. You became involved with it. Can you talk to me about how it unfolded? How did you? I know you continued, and then eventually you became a host yourself. Can you talk about how these transitions
Well,
happened?
in that period, I was actually in graduate school, and I had a church job. I did choirs, children's choirs at a church, and so it limited my opportunities to travel to go to singing. So I didn't go to many all-day singings, but I did go to the monthly singing, and ended up moving to Florida for a while and started going to the singing in Tallahassee and the singing in Micanopy. They both had monthly singing, so I would participate in those.
When did you move? Do you have about the years you moved to Florida and back? Just to kind of place when it was happening.
That's when I moved. I believe it was 97 when I moved down there. I think that's right. And I actually moved back to Athens in 2000, but did not get back into singing again until 2007 or 2008.
Okay.
So I was out. And at that time, I actually started back the weekend of the Botanical Garden singing. The weekend right now is structured where we have several singings. At one point, so it was the 6-book weekend, and then it was the 7-book weekend, and then they combined 2 books, and I think it's back to the 6-book weekend, where there's a singing in Decatur on Saturday, all-day singing on Saturday, and the Hollingsworths host a singing at their house on Saturday night, and then on Sunday we have 2 books singing at the Botanical Gardens. So there's lots of opportunities to sing from different books that weekend.
So 6 books, meaning 6 different books, including editions of the Sacred Harp?
Yes.
What are some of those books?
There's on Saturday the J.L. White book is used at the Decatur singing, and I regret I can't give you an accurate history, but it was like as sometimes happens with people, as they have different opinions about how it should be. So this one said, "Oh, I think the book should be like this." So they went and published their own book, and this one said, "No, it should be like this," and they published their book. So, so it's the J.L. White book, Sacred Harp version of the Sacred Harp, and then on Sunday what we call the Denson revision, which was the from 1991 edition of the Sacred Harp.
And then there's other books too, right?
Right. The other book that's used at the Athens singing, I actually brought a copy because this is the singing, which is officially known as the University of Georgia singing. And this is the only place it's used, and this is a reprint of the Social Harp.
Lovely.
And it's a 4-shaped book, and it was compiled by John McCurry, who was a native of Elberton, so nearby Elbert County, excuse me. And it has some more secular songs and lyric-wise than you'd find in the Sacred Harp.
Such as?
Oh, she's gonna put me on the spot. That's okay. This is the only place that it's used. I'm trying to find the one. It recounts a sort of tale of crime and punishment.
Oh my.
What's the name of that song? There's some references to imbibing to excess. And there's one of that, I think, in the Sacred Harp. So you've put me on the spot, Joanna.
Oh, that's fine. We can move forward, and if you remember, that's great. So it really has its own. What you're basically saying is it has its own distinctive flavor.
Yes, there's a good bit of overlap with other books in the Sacred Harp.
So they share some of the same repertoire.
Right, and some of the tunes, and then some McCurry. My understanding is he sort of memorized the tunes and then went home and wrote them down and made arrangements. So You will find some different arrangements, I believe.
So the
of
harmonies
tunes.
are often
Yes.
distinctive?
I think so, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he was evidently sort of interesting character. So.
Yeah. So we've got a couple versions of the sacred harp, the social harp.
Right. The Christian Harmony, which is a 7-shape tune book. And what am I missing? The Georgian Harmony, which is a 4-shape, and that was, as we were talking, written by all songs by Raymond Hamrick, who just died yesterday at the age of 99.
Wow.
Very prolific composer and a good composer. So, let's see, what am I missing? I can't remember what I'm missing now.
Wow. Do you know of any other places where you will have this many hymn books in succession?
Well, it's kind of it's sort of a growing trend that sometimes at singings that may be like a convention where it's a 2-day singing of the same book. On Saturday evening they'll have use a different book. You know, they'll have a sort of what they call an alternative singing. So it's becoming very common because recently there have been some new tune books published and some that have been reposts, like the Christian Harmony now, the 2010 edition, is a combination of what was called the Alabama book and the Carolina book. Right. So it's kind of actually put songs together, put those things back together, and added some that were unique to both. So,
right.
So there's the Shenandoah Harmony is a recent publication, and so there have been a few that are new that have, and as people have sing a lot, that they're just, it's like you have an appetite for it, more. So it's
right.
It's becoming commonplace to use more than one book at a singing or a convention.
Do you have a favorite book that you like to sing from?
Well, I think it may depend a little bit on who I'm singing with, but I think probably the Sacred Harp, the 91 edition is probably my favorite. I do like the Christian Harmony 2010 too.
Yeah.
But this is I think that the committee who put this together did a very nice job of including wonderful old tunes, a variety of tunes that are just good to sing, easy, fun to sing, and beautiful to sing, and just so probably it's my favorite. If I only could take one.
It's that desert island question.
Yeah. I like the Georgian Harmony too. So I like Raymond Hamrick's music. So, but it's some included here. So too.
Yeah. So returning to the 1990s, you started to attend singings with Lee. You went to Florida. You came back, and you said around, was it 2007? When you started to get involved
again? I think it was 2008, actually.
2008.
Yes, and that was that weekend. That's right. Thanks for taking me back there. So it was that weekend that I was able to sing again. I no longer had a church job. I was out of graduate school, so I was just free to go wherever I wanted to, and so I started singing that spring pretty regular, and was able to go to all-day singings. And then that summer, I was fortunate enough to go to Camp Fasola.
Oh.
So that was a great experience. So it was 4 days of solid singing, just from sunup to midnight. So, and it was a lot of fun, and met many people from all over. So that was just, and it was, it was summer camp, it was for adults, It was
How
a lot of fun.
How long did the camp last?
It was I guess 4 days. It was arranged around the National Convention in Birmingham, so that people who went to camp could go to the convention and just take a whole week for singing, and so try to maximize singing and minimize expenses, travel expenses.
Right.
So, and it was held at Camp Lee, which was in Anniston, Alabama. They don't have the adult camp there anymore, but it was a lot of fun. So, and there were classes on the rudiments for beginners, and beating time and composing, things about. I'm trying to think what else I remember that was particular. We looked at the different variety of songs, and were included in the book. There were some set pieces, there's some plain songs, those kind of things, folk hymns. And then we looked at like the history of the book from a chronological perspective, like from the oldest song each decade, what sort of songs there were from that decade that are included. So it's a great way to get to know the book and the music too, and a bit of the history. That was very, very good.
Okay, so you went there, and you said you also started traveling to some of the all-day singings.
Right.
Where were some of the places you traveled to?
To Bremen, Georgia, to the Holly Springs, just a wonderful place to sing, and great people there. And to Big Creek Primitive Baptist Church in Alpharetta. And Alpharetta used to have the June singing. At one time, I think it was at the courthouse, and then it was moved to a school. I think it's back at the courthouse now. I'm trying to think what that year particular.
Or even beyond that year?
Yeah.
What are some of the places that stand out to you?
In Georgia, there's a Andrews Chapel, or Andrews Schoolhouse. It sort of served both purposes, which is down near Barnesville. That's out in the country. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to sing. It still has the remains of the schoolhouse. It has desks, chalkboard, and things, and a big heater in the middle of the floor. An old stove heater. It's a great place to sing, and nice people there to sing with. Then in Alabama, there's up in northeast Alabama in Henniger and Ider. There are two strong singing communities there. One is led sort of by the Ivy family in Henniger, and one is sort of led by the Wooten family.
Okay. Both
very strong and good folks and great singers. So, so those kind of. I've been to Tallahassee to sing with in a different version of the Sacred Harvest, known as the Cooper Book.
Okay.
So, and it was done by a man. I think he was from Dothan, Alabama, I believe. And that book's used primarily in South Alabama and Northwest Florida and South Georgia, actually, and then some in Texas too.
Okay.
But it's more widespread than that. But that's kind of the heart of its use, I'd say, its home territory.
So thinking back, exposed in the 1970s, participating in the 1990s, a little bit of a break, and then coming back to Athens, 2008, you really start to travel. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the network you were forming and how you then started to become a host for these singings. Mm-hmm. How did that network form?
Well, that's the nice thing about this tradition is you go somewhere and meet someone, and it's almost like, the string is there. It's almost, it seems almost automatic. That if you're a singer, I mean, automatic, you're connected. You don't have to do anything. You're connected. So when I came back, the Athens group was led actually by a college student named Erin Mills, and she did a great job. She was real enthusiastic and brought in lots of young folks, and so it was a lot of fun to sing with the group. And she also was helped some by Gwen Boone, another student here at the time. And as it happened, they left.
Yeah.
And we were actually meeting in a church that's, I'm trying to think of the name of the church now because it's changed since then. It was over on Boulevard.
Okay.
And her husband was the choir director there, so he had, a way to, we can meet at my church,
Right.
So they moved on, and so we had to find a new place to meet and a new person to kind of lead us. And another student whose name was Ariella Perry took up the chair position, and the Methodist Church downtown, First Methodist, graciously gave us a room to use once a month, and so we started meeting there. And as Ariella got a little more into her studies, I was like, she was pre-med, and so got a little more busy and didn't have quite as much time to devote. I started sort of filling in sometimes for her, and so it just kind of eventually worked out that she said she couldn't do it anymore, so I didn't want it to die out. So I just said, well, I'm going to do this. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's really not much to do. I mean, it's one of those things where you can put a lot of work into it or just put a little work into it, as long as you've got a place to meet. The rest of it is kind of optional. So I try very hard to get publicity out. So and I like to have snacks so people can feel welcome in case they didn't get any dinner before they come. They'll have something to eat and to tide them over. And so I try to be a good hostess in that regard.
So when did it move to your house? That's I think it's a great space.
Well, the church was a good space for us. The only difficulty was there was like a coded lock.
Mm-hmm.
So we either had to have someone who would stand and open the door, or and that wasn't, we didn't want any singers to stand there. We wanted them to be singing. So that was a little bit of an issue, and it was downstairs, and so I'm toting all of these loaner books and snacks and ice and drinks, and I realized that, well, that's a lot of work for me.
Yeah.
And timing, so it's because ice, it's hard you can't go and leave it in your truck all day and it'd be there when it's time for singing. So, and our numbers were not so big that I said, well, these people will fit in my living room, so all I need is just to get some chairs. So I said, well, we're going to start just meeting at my house, so that way I didn't have to worry about loading everything up and then loading it back up to take home, and all the food was already there, so all I had to do was just set it out, and so it worked out really well. And the house I was living in at that time the living room was fairly large and nice hardwood floors, and it made a very nice sound. So So my house now the sound's okay, but it's not quite as large as I wish as it could be. So but that's a good problem to have.
It is.
So I like having it at my house, and it gives me an excuse to do at least some cleaning once a month.
So about what year did you start having it at your house?
I think it was probably 2011.
Okay.
I can't say for sure, but I think it was around there.
So you have a good core group that often comes?
Yes, we have a pretty good core group. It's small, but pretty loyal. So,
Are there particular singers who stand out to you who
well,
attend regularly?
the Hollingsworths are always faithful about coming. John and Elsie and Bill come, and Michael Spencer is very good about coming, and we have some newer ones like Christy Sinkson comes regularly. She's very faithful. She only started singing a few years ago, but she's been real faithful. And then we have some like Winston Stevens, who has been singing a good while, and she's not quite as regular, but she's our standard. So those are the ones that I usually see, and some of the younger folks are becoming more regular too. So I'm excited about that.
It's interesting just thinking about the things you've been telling me and what I know about the tradition. Sounds like even from the early days of the tradition in Athens, there's been a lot of university involvement, which I think it's interesting. You've got this rural university, so you have some of the places for some of the traditional singers, but you also have this interesting mix. Do you have any?
Right. Well, the challenge for, especially with involving students, is they always leave. They come, and depending on where they are in their studies, we may see them a year or 2 years, or and they're gone. But they always add a lot to the mix, so it's nice, and hopefully they go on and find a community of singers somewhere else. I hope so. I know a couple have, but I won't say that all of them have, but some do, and continue to sing. We occasionally will have some interest from faculty. Stephanie Tingler used to participate more often, who's in the music faculty. She's had some health issues and had to step away, but she used to participate when she wasn't resting her voice or preparing for her performance, and she would often bring students to have that experience too. Although I kind of dissuade anybody who's a voice major from participating, because I think it's kind of challenging to pace yourself and save your voice. So
Right.
Yeah, I would never say don't come, but I would just be cautious about a voice major participating. So
Okay.
anyway.
Because of the sound production.
Right. It's easy. Very easy to get caught up in the singing at the top of your voice, and
Right.
that can be kind of hard if you do that
Yeah.
for a long time. So
Yeah. I think too, just continuing on this theme of the hands across the table with the people who've been participating in it for most of their life, as well as university. I'm interested in other ways that in the Athens area, we've had intersections between different venues and the singers. Can you talk to me about events in the area? I'm thinking, I know you had some hand in the screening of the documentary Awake My Soul. Can you talk to me about other events where different venues intersected in interesting ways?
Well, I thought that was actually a good event for us, Awake My Soul screening. And I was grateful that we have Cine as a venue for such a thing, because we could have the screening, and after the screening we had an introductory singing and an introduction for anybody who wanted to join in. So it was a nice way to combine those things, because in introducing this tradition to anyone, that participation almost has to be part of it. So, to watch the documentary is great, but it's better to feel it, to actually experience it. So it was nice to have that all together, to be able to do that all together. And Matt and Erica, the directors of the movie, they were touring the movie as part of a festival, and I don't know the name of the festival, because it's a common thing. Anyway, so it was screening across the South at all sorts of different venues, mostly movie theaters, I believe. And Matt was here for that night, and he said it was the biggest crowd of the ones. So, that's we had like 85 to 90 people, which is, for something like that documentary, what some people would say, that's old country fogey singing, that would be, so that was good, I thought.
So you like the response was good?
Yes. Yeah, so it was a good time.
Do you remember what year that was?
I believe it was 2012, I believe, or 11. Oh.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, that's fine.
That's terrible. I should remember that, but I don't trust myself to remember anything more. But other things, and I was not part of this, but we have had a group who participated in the North Georgia Folk Festival, who did a set there.
Is that in recent years?
And I don't remember what year it was. I regret that. But I believe it was in around 2005 or 6.
Okay.
I think. So that was. We don't have much. I wish there was more interchange with that group. But they're seem to be more interested in instrumental music and dance. So, but we'll keep trying.
Yeah.
Particular other things. We did have a singing at the Globe one night upstairs.
That's an interesting space.
Yeah, it was an interesting space, but we didn't have a lot of listeners, so that was just one of those cases where we just have to find a place that just hit it's about timing, isn't it? So we actually, a group of us sang out in the street one night and had more attention than we did at the Globe. So
where was that?
It was actually down in front of the 40 Watt. So how did
you come to decide to do that?
Well, we were actually there for a show, a musical show. A friend was playing in a band, and we were waiting to get in, and decided we would just square up and sing out in the street, and so we did.
What was the response like?
Oh, it was very positive, and people were really interested and curious. So.
Did you have your books, or were you singing from memory?
We were just singing from memory, tunes we could remember. So, but it was fun.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Just thinking too, this network. I know you've been involved for a while. Are there some participants who have really stood out to you over the years? People who have kept the tradition or continued the tradition in particular ways? Are there any singers you'd like to talk about that you've enjoyed meeting?
Yeah. Oh, Well, I think Charlene Wallace is a real significant person. And she lives in Waco, Georgia. And some people attribute the sort of revival of Sacred Harp singing and music to Hugh McGraw, who led a quartet on tours to all sorts of folk festivals in the 70s around the country, and started sort of a revival, a renewed interest in this kind of music. And Charlene was with him everywhere. And there's sort of this joke about Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire about, well, yeah, Fred Astaire was amazing. He said, well, Ginger Rogers did everything he did backwards in high heels, you know, and that sort of thing. That Miss Charlene, she did everything that Hugh did, but with a carload of casseroles, you know. So she's not one to take the spotlight easily, but she has worked really hard, and is very encouraging to people to come to singings, and very appreciative of people who do. And she always cooks tons of food to make sure everybody's fed and happy when they leave. And she's worked with the Sacred Heart Publishing Company, been an officer. And for the Athens, the University of Georgia singing, she was the secretary for probably, I don't know, almost 40 years, I would guess. Yeah. So
Is that
I
the
haven't
Botanical
confirmed,
Gardens is
right.
long-standing?
I haven't confirmed that, but from what I've seen, that she was the secretary for most of the time. So she's one.
One. Do you have others?
Yeah. Well, Hugh McGraw, of course, has been very instrumental in promoting the tradition, and he always gives me a hard time if I don't show it. He says, if I come in, if he hadn't seen me lately, he says, I think I know you, you know, or something like that. You know, he's like, your face looks kind of familiar. So he gives me a hard time if I haven't been to a singing when I should have been to, or that I could have been to.
Yeah.
So he's a lot of fun. And let's see. And of course, David Ivey is the leader of Camp Foster Law, and he does a lot of work along those lines. And he received the NEA Heritage Fellow award this past year, and so he's up in Northeast Alabama. And of course, I see people like Buell Cobb, whose writings just capture and inspire just these wonderful events and wonderful people. And I think that's a real important part, is for being the archivist. And I'm trying to think who, in terms of a promoter, that isn't. Lee Rogers was quite a promoter. So she loved shape note singing, and she would always she's always, you know, do you want to ride? Do you want to ride? I'm going to sing, and do you want to ride? So she was always trying to provide a means of transportation if somebody wanted to go. And
yeah,
she loved singing very much. We lost her several years ago to cancer. But she's one that sticks out in my mind a lot.
Yeah.
And some younger generation people, I mentioned Michael Walker, who actually lives in the UK now and has been a leader in spreading Sacred Harp. They have like weekly singings in London now, and yes, and so he was instrumental in starting a Camp Foster in Europe. So he's someone who loves it and promotes it seriously.
Yeah.
And then I'll mention Nathan Reese and Jonathan Smith are young men who they're working on the archival side. They do lots of field recordings, and they do CDs that I think is really has been an important way to promote the singing for people to listen and get excited about songs. I think, well, I've never heard it done like that. It's like, so, and they're doing a lot of, Nathan too, I think is doing a lot of digitizing of records with at the Sacred Heart Museum, I think along with Jesse Proman-Callsburg. So these young people who know all that technology stuff are doing a great job too.
So they're preserving the tradition through preserving the historical records and documents.
Yes. So yeah. So I mean, I think that's a real important way to promote it. To keep it. Yeah. I'm trying to think who else. The Hollingsworths are always very enthusiastic and about singing. So they're cannot go without mentioning them.
Yeah.
So
speaking of this digital side of it, well, first of all, it sounds like you've seen. First thing I want to ask, it sounds like you've seen some real changes in the places where this is performed over the years you've been involved.
Yes, definitely. I don't know. I don't know how early it was sung in the UK, because there were several singers I know who were singing long before I was. That I think that they probably got into it maybe as early as the 70s, I believe. I'm not for sure, but it's been spreading, and the internet has been, and I think, an important tool for that, because you can advertise singings, and you can correspond and make arrangements so you can help singers who are visiting, make well, you can stay at my house, I'll be glad to host you, that sort of thing. So it makes those connections a lot easier. And then people who are traveling anyway say, I've got to go to Denver for business. I wonder if there are any singings next week. They can look it up and just drop in. It's like a couple of months ago we had someone from Chicago drop in at our monthly singing. So
it really has changed the network, would you say?
Right, yeah. It has, I think, just the opportunities for people to share their singings and to be involved in singings that, people are a lot more mobile now than they were. So it seems to be a good accessory to have to that mobility, to know, where can I sing next week if I'm going to be in Toronto?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you yourself help maintain a Facebook page for Athens area
for the
singings.
Athens. Yes. I mostly just do publications of regional singings primarily, so that would be a comfortable day's drive for someone who would want to go. There are, of course, the fasola.org site maintains all of the yearly singings, and of course anybody who wants can get
a great resource.
The minutes book and the directory of singing. So so it lists all the singings, all the all-day singings for the year. So
you found the internet to be a really good tool.
Yes, definitely. And of course, there are tons of recordings, YouTube recordings, video recordings, and just audio recordings. And it's wonderful to hear, well, how did they sing this in Western Massachusetts last year, or well, how did they sing this in Hoboken, So there's you get to see all these differing areas and to hear what they sounded like, and if you're learning the song, you can at least hear what it sounds like and say, maybe decide, I don't know if I want to lead that one. It sounds like it might be hard to lead, so
Right.
So it's a great resource, I think. And there are places where you can listen to the different parts even.
Oh.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, there's some that are sung with a sort of an electronically generated voice, and then there's some just a tone,
Okay.
electronic tone. So, but there's
Different
still,
kinds of resources.
yeah, it's available though. So,
Yeah. Well, as we move towards wrapping up, first of all, are there things that we haven't talked about that you would like to share
oh wow.
about the tradition, the community, the music, anything that's just really on your heart?
Well, I was thinking about sort of the question about sort of what sorts of things stood out to me when I think about my experiences, and I just sometimes you just don't know something's significant and until you look back at it. But there have been times that like going to camp was a really big part of my trail, because as soon as I went to camp, it was like I took off, and I started singing full time after camp.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was going every weekend, I was going to sing, and my friends were thinking that I had joined a cult, and I said, well, not exactly, kind of, but not exactly. But I think about just sometimes I went to a singing, and John Paul Jones was there, who was in Led Zeppelin. And I think, that seems so just kind of, I would never have, when would I ever cross paths with someone like that,
Do you remember what singing that was, where it was?
Yeah, I remember it was actually a Christian harmony singing, was up at Warren Wilson College. So, yeah. And then I think about the contrast of, here's this person who's like this rock icon, who's coming to sing this, what some people call it, just, hillbilly backwards music, and here I am I'm the hillbilly backwards person coming, and just to meet sort of in this common place, we're so, really kind of live in two different worlds, but can meet that way. And that, to me, that's sort of an illustration of it, of kind of what the tradition is in a way. Not that necessarily famous people are coming and the rest of us come and watch them or something, but not that. But that so many different people, different kinds of people, can come together and share this experience, and all be rewarded in some way, all get something out of it, whether it's just the enjoyment of the music, or if it's something, higher or deeper, or that's all there. They can all happen simultaneously, and without anybody having to compromise, really.
Yeah.
And then I think about an experience, sort of last week I went to a singing Crossroads Primitive Baptist Church in Tallapoosa, Georgia, on a Saturday night. And it wasn't a big class. There were maybe, I don't know, maybe 25 singers, 30 singers at the most. I don't think any more than that. But one of the singers had just lost a nephew. He had killed himself, and she was very upset. Another singer, his son's friend's brother had killed himself. And another was facing an illness. So it was kind of, all of the songs seemed to be about life ending too short. There's comfort, and that you're surrounded by love. I mean, it was just it was just such I don't know how to describe it. It was just really an expression of love and tenderness that everybody shared. Everybody sort of felt it, I think. I mean, I had the sense that everybody felt it. That we were just singing these people up and singing their hurts away, you know, as well as our voices and hearts could. And I don't know where in the world I could ever find something else like that.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Just on this, you know, this idea of memory and loss and music all coming together, I think it's really interesting. This is just that timing of, you know, you were talking about how we lost Raymond Hambrick yesterday, and I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say about him, or, you know, you've met him and you said his music means a lot to you.
Yeah, he was very talented composer. And he was a watchmaker by trade. And he seemed to take the same sort of precision required to work on those watches and repair the watches to his music. And that he would write something down and play with it, you know, and just perfect it. Just, you know, fiddle with it, until it ticked just right, you know. So, and he was a humorous fellow and just a true gentleman. You know, you could just, he was definitely of a different time. You could tell that. And I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, but because I sometimes deferred from his closer friends, you know. But he gave a lot to the community. He was a wonderful singer. Even at 99, he could still sing. Maybe not as strong as he used to, but it was still a very beautiful bass. And his contributions will always stand out, you know, to this tradition community. And I'm grateful that we have all this music that is still available to us. So, yeah.
Just a couple of last things. Do you have a favorite hymn? Is that one of those desert island questions?
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Or a couple of favorites that stand out to you?
I really do like Raymond's Christian's Farewell. I think it's a beautiful tune, and it's really, I like the Christian's Hope a lot. That's really hard.
It is hard.
It's that's one of those things like, well, you know, kind of like what mood I'm in, kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, Raymond's hymn has become part of the Athens tradition when you close.
We use that as our closing song. Yeah. Yeah. So it's beautiful, appropriate, and not too difficult to sing. So it's a good one.
Finally, if you could summarize what the tradition means to you. I know that's a big question, but if there's just something you want to wrap up with, you know, it sounds like it's been for a long time. It's been a part of your life in different modes and intersections. What does it mean?
Well, I see it as for me it's I guess it's church. You know, it's egalitarian. You know, we leave any bitterness at the door. We leave the world at the door. We don't talk about politics. You know, we don't bring that in the door, and it's somebody at the symposium said something that it was a religious, religious or a worship service. I don't know exactly what they said, but I see it sort of as a continuum that I think I said earlier that simultaneously all these people can get out of it what they want or what they need at the same time, and if you treat it as worship, and you can worship and fully without anyone, messing that up for you. It can happen. And I see everybody can lead. It's very egalitarian. I just wish the world were more like, shape note singing. It doesn't matter how talented you are. There's no audition. You can sing whatever part you want. It's just, there's so many freedoms built in, and they just all blend together to make this. I know some people call it racket, but it's it's as Buell might say, it's the people's racket. This is the people's music. So for me, I appreciate that after coming from a more traditional, classical experience, a performance experience, a performance tradition. It's nice not to have any pressure. There's no bad notes. There's just let it out. And it can come all from feeling, or it can be all intellectual if you want it. It's just the choice is yours. It's just so the fellowship is wonderful, and the food ain't bad either. So it's nourishing on many levels for me. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time, Shannon. This was just really wonderful.
Thank you for your interest and in the tradition and in this project, the work you've put into this project. So we're very grateful.